Are we seeing a bunch of free agency overpays here early-ish in the offseason? I keep forgetting it is December. Are we seeing some free agency overpays? Including this gentleman, Dylan C. So the goal with this beginning segment of the show is to talk about three pitchers that have recently signed pretty lucrative deals coming off of, well, not their best years, okay? And in free agency, in baseball, your year before going into free agency is called a platform year. It is the year that you are going to use in your proposals to teams. You're going to set, teams basically reach out, they say, what are you looking for? You kind of give them a general, like, we're looking for this, we think the value's around here, and the teams either scoff at it or say, that sounds pretty good, or that's fairly close. You know, there might be something there. Is there any wiggle room with years or numbers, right? So you get one of those three kind of replies, and then you figure out who might be in and who you can then come back to with a proposal. So, like, some teams come to you, sometimes you go to teams and you just say, hey, this is happening over here. We know you have a need here. We just want to let you know so you don't miss the party. And that is how these things usually get kicked off. Sometimes they go really quickly, and sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes there's, a bunch of teams in, sometimes there's only one. Sometimes someone comes in right at the end. That happened to me my last year with the A's. They were not even on the radar until right at the end, and they just kind of came out of nowhere. And so, like, that happens. And it's very interesting because that leads us to these numbers that we're getting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over these three deals, and we're going to look at it statistically, anecdotally, and try to decide whether or not we believe that this is an overpay, or if it's kind of aligned with how these things work, and then what other forces can be kind of thrown in there that might drive the number up just a little bit past where you think it is, that make it feel more of an overpay than it is. There are like details that might make it make more sense. And so I went and found a bunch of them, and I would like to share them with you. And we are going to start with Dylan Cease and his big deal with the Toronto Blue Jays, as reported by the Athletic here, for a 7-year, $210 million deal to Toronto. If you're doing the math at home, that is $30 million a year, generally AAV, but we do know there is a certain level of deferments happening. We don't know exactly what that number is. Deferments are interesting in this context too because of the tax issue and the Canada thing, and there's a lot that goes into that, much of which I'm still learning as we go, but deferments are almost necessary at times, and bonuses, which are where you're paid at your home, because you're only paid during the season. So your paychecks only go into the season. The off season, they don't come through. So, like, you can claim that you're somewhere else if you're paid in the off season as a bonus, because it can be given then. Those come to play and are probably going to keep coming into play more and more and more for Toronto, because Toronto seems to be spending money, and they do seem to be leaning into those mechanics in order to make it make a little bit more sense, both for them and the players. So there is deferred money. As of this writing, I didn't know, we couldn't find what it was, but the projection is around $26 million a year in annual value AAV, okay? So let's go through it statistically, because as we all know, as many of us know kind of intuitively, but also know from watching, he had a down year last year comparatively. If you remember in 2022, he had that stellar year where he was the runner-up for the Cy Young with the 2.2 ERA, where he absolutely dominated in Chicago. This was not that year. He was 8-12 with a 4.55 ERA. He threw 168 innings, which is good, 152 hits, which is, though it's not quite as dominant as he's been in the past, that's still good, right? And he struck out 215 guys in those 168 innings. So peripherally, like, the pieces are still there. He tends to walk a higher number. He's walked 71 guys in 168 innings, good for a 9.8% walk rate. The league average is about 8.8%. You're going to see a trend with all three of these guys. They walk slightly above average, but just like the other two guys we're going to talk about, his improved through the year. So he walked way more at the beginning of the year and then got settled in a little bit, and that often happens, especially for starters. But he has a 29.8% K rate. So, like, that has always been there. It's been there through every single year, good, bad, or indifferent. And He had a 1.33 whip, which is too high, in my opinion. But a lot of factors can factor in that. So, like, if we're looking at potential-wise, because a lot of this stuff is based on projecting into the future, and he has had an ace-style year, and he's thrown a no-hitter. Like, he's shown that, like, if he clicks, if there's another thing that just clicks for a few months, he could be the best pitcher on the planet, which oftentimes is enough to get a deal done like this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what happened last year, and I'm gonna pull on a thread that I pulled on a couple times earlier in this past season to explain Devin Williams' struggles, even Ryan Helsley a little bit after the tipping thing, and how big of a difference a defense can make on this style of pitcher. The high strikeout, high risk, high reward sometimes guy where runs come in bunches because it's usually related to home runs or like damage type hits. It's just the way that it is. When you get lots of swing and misses, you tend to give up more fly balls, and more fly balls are tending to go out of the park more because that is the hit. It's like a trade-off, right? So you might get more strikeouts, which means you can strand a lot more guys if things go your way, but also you tend to give up that 3-run home run more than, say, a Logan Webb who is getting ground ball after ground ball after ground ball. Now, Logan Webb gets ground balled to death sometimes, where it's just 4-hole, 6-hole, 4-hole, 6-hole, 4-hole, 6-hole, and he can't get a strikeout, and he needs to get out of the inning, but he can't because he keeps giving up contact. That's the flip side. Dylan Cease is not one of those guys, and the other two we're about to talk about are also not. So that tends to hurt them if their defense isn't good. So this is what happened last year in terms of defense. The Padres were 19th in fielding run value with -1, 19th in the league, and they were also 19th in the league in outs above average with -7. So overall as a team, even though they have the platinum glove in the right field, overall they're a below average defensive team, okay? When you're a fly ball guy, especially, you need the outfield to run things down. Things in the gap, you need to be able to get some help there once in a while, or things over their head, you need to get help there once in a while, right? So if you have one outfielder or a revolving door of two outfielders that just, like, you haven't really found something that sticks, or even the infield just doesn't have the range and the things that are getting through the infield usually don't, that can hurt you, and those are still earned. There's been a big argument online. This is happening a lot. I think it's because I'm starting to teach younger guys to pitch a little bit more here up where I live, that I'm becoming aware of the social media side of teaching and talking about value in players. But like Derek Jeter, everyone says he wasn't great defensively. I believe Derek Jeter was a rock solid. He made all the plays he should make. The problem was he just didn't have the range that other guys had. So things that were just hits were just outs for other guys, but he just didn't touch them at all, so they were hits. Like, that's a thing. That's a real thing. That there is guys with higher range that make more plays, and that they just get everything. It's not just making the play that they field it and they make the good throw. He was good at that. It's the ball that's hit into the hole that another more athletic person who has better lateral range actually gets a glove on it. He doesn't even touch it, and one's called an out and one's a hit. But no error was made. So errors aren't the only thing that matter. It's about range, all right? That happens. And he wasn't on a great defensive team. That factored in a little bit, okay? On the flip side, the Blue Jays last year were first in FRV, which is fielding run value, in 45, and 7th in outs above average with 21. So they're a very good defensive team. So that tells me that that might help the case that Dylan Cease might get a little bit more lucky with us because we have elite defenders. And with no Bo Bichette, which is the only guy that really brought them down anywhere, is not going to be their shortstop next year. By all accounts, to be Andres Jimenez, who was a Gold Glove second baseman. So, like, that might be upgraded as well. And Bo Bichette was at short a lot this year, too. And they were still that good. So just factor that in. They might even be better next year. There's a chance with Dalton Varsho, rather. Like, they're just very good defensively. So that could mean that a few more plays are made for him that avoid that 3-run inning that make this ERA look way different. That's usually what pitchers are. It's not guaranteed, but it probably will help. His batting average of balls put in play, which is always higher for strikeout guys, remember, because you have less balls put in play, and that means the hits you do give up are a higher percentage of those hits, so therefore that batting average will be higher. It's still higher than his his career average. He had a 323 career BABIP, and his career was 297. So it's 25 points above. I like BABIP only when you are comparing it to the same person. So if you're comparing a guy's BABIP this year to their historical BABIP, that's a good way to say unlucky or lucky. If you're comparing it to the league, everyone's different, right? Ground ball guys have lower BABIPs because they give up more in balls in play, and so that same number of hits is a lower batting average. That they just have lower ones generally.
I have a unique holiday gift idea. It is called Superpower because, Kratz, they care about you. It's a very unique health platform. It's new, and it finally gets you the answers that you need about what's really happening inside your body and what to do about it.
I got the answers. I'm on the journey of what to do about it. Why would I not want to give it to one of my loved ones in my life?
Give your loved ones something that actually lasts. That's right, Kratz. Better health and more time with you. If you go to superpower.com/gift, you get a free $49 premium gift box with your gifted membership. After you sign up, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please mention FT to support the show. One simple lab test measures 100 plus biomarkers. We're talking hormones, vitamins, minerals, and so much more. You'll get a full health report and a personalized action plan built by clinicians, including nutrition, supplement, and lifestyle guidance. Get after it, FT fam.
There's no like benchmark number that's good. It's only comparative to yourself. And if you are historically a 270 guy and you have a 350, something's going on. Like things are being hit that were hits that weren't before. A lot of times it's defense. A lot of times it's your location and you're just not locating very well. Sometimes it's both, right? So his was a little bit high, but actually not super crazy. So that doesn't fully explain only the defense, but it probably was a little bit of the factor. Again, it just takes 1 or 2 or 3 big hits to account for like 7 or 8 more runs than you would have given up, which could be a full run on your ERA, right? Like that is how fast these things can swing, especially if you're a reliever. So it's worth noting. So he had a little bad luck. He didn't command the ball very well either. So a lot of this is on him, but he didn't have a great defense. So he just wasn't put in the position to like get away with a lot of stuff. He like, you know what I mean? Sometimes the margin of error is not as big. This year it wasn't. So that could account for it because a lot of the other peripheral numbers were there. So is he being overpaid is the question. Let's look at how teams look at it. They factor in WAR. I know everyone hates WAR. WAR is important. So the 2 WAR numbers I look at are BWAR and FWAR. BWAR is baseball reference WAR. That is what happened, right? FWAR factors in things that can be projected, what we think should have probably happened based on how he pitched. So if there's a big discrepancy between these, sometimes there's some bad luck in there. Sometimes projections aren't like foolproof, obviously, but they do account for more stuff usually. So his BWAR was a 1.1, but his FWAR was a 3.4. So like the Blue Jays are like, you know, I know he had a 4.5 ERA, which is high-ish, but everything else lines up to what we expect from him, and he's healthy. So like we still feel better about this. Right now, this is last year, the WAR, one WAR was like 7 or 7.5 million per on the lower end. Let's say it's anywhere from like 8 or 9 million this year because that's how markets work. So if he is averaging for his career, which he is, he's averaging on average between both WAR numbers he gets about 2.5 to 3.5. He's about a 3 WAR player a year. That would account to about $21 million. Or sorry, 24 million if we're saying it's 8 million. So if he's projected to be about a $24 million player based on WAR, and he's getting paid 26 after the deferments, it's pretty close. Pretty close at least. Like they're making that distinction behind closed doors. And he's also probably the prize starting pitcher, so that means other teams are probably involved, which could account for that extra 2 million. Like maybe they had to go 2 million more in order to beat everybody else. That's when the bidding war comes in. So we've established value, we know what we want to do, and then you have to beat another team's number. That is how this thing unfolds, and that's why sometimes you can get this little push past what maybe the average perfect value is. Maybe you get a little bit more than that because there was another team that was serious about it, and the difference between getting you and not getting you was worth that extra million or 2. And I think that's what we saw here. I genuinely do think that's what we saw. And also, there are a few other pros, I think, that are worth mentioning. One, he's extremely durable. I don't think people realize this, but he has thrown 30-plus starts. I think it's 31-plus starts, actually, 5 years in a row. Like, he has thrown over 168 innings is actually his low. He has thrown in the high 100, like 160, 170, 180, 190 innings every year for 5 straight years and made 30 plus starts. So he's not been hurt. That is a huge, like, think about the state of the game now. That's a big deal. But that can have a flip side, which I'll talk about in a second. And he has ace potential. He has a no-hitter, and he has a year under his belt where he almost won a Cy Young. So it's in there. They feel like it's in there. And if we can get it in Toronto, if we can bring that out of him just a little bit more, then we could potentially be getting more value than we're paying. So I think that's pretty good. I think he could potentially be an ace. He gets a little bit erratic. He does walk too many guys. Again, though, that's something you can learn to be better at. Right, so that can be a little bit of development. That can be some mechanical cue. That can be something in your brain that changes, and you just suddenly don't walk people anymore. He could do that at any point. That's part of becoming a better pitcher and going more places you go, the better chance you have to do that. But I would say after being that healthy for that long, he's thrown a lot of innings, and he throws hard. Hard throwers who throw lots of innings, it's pretty much inevitable that you are going to go under the knife for a year at some point. Garrett Cole did it last year. It was almost guaranteed. Like it was built in. They knew it was going to happen at some point. He's still worth his contract. So there is a chance, though, that probably happens in the next 7 years, a la like Chris Sale, right? Chris Sale was healthy for 8 years, like literally didn't miss anything for 8 years, and then had 3 or 4 years where he was it was a struggle. It was a struggle for a while as he got older, but he threw tons of innings. So like, there's only so many innings you can throw, right? You can't say 100% healthy for 15 years anymore. Like it's just, or you're not competing. You're out of the game for that because you're not throwing very hard because you're trying not to get hurt. Like you have to chance it, and unfortunately, that's just the way that it comes out. So there's a chance that shows up at some point, but I'm sure they know that, and they're willing to sacrifice one of those years in order to get the upside on the back end, right? I don't like that it's like that. But it is. It's just work hazard, man. Workers' comp. Any job that, especially physical labor, should have guarantees that as long as you give everything you got, if you get hurt, you still are going to be taken care of until you can get healthy. And because sometimes stuff happens, and that's just the nature of the game. So, do I think that's an overpay? Maybe just a bit, but I think that the bidding war might account for that, and that is normal. And this is not outside of the norm. Do I think he'll fulfill this contract? It just depends on how consistent he is in those 7 years. But the potential is there, and that's what they're paying for. So I think this deal is a little bit better than it's being given credit for, and I think it was just a sticker shock that happened that a lot of people are like, he was not very good last year. What are we doing? Like, but he has a lot of the things that a team would want, especially the health and the ceiling. And if you are confident in your ability to develop players, then you go get a Dylan Cease because he's shown that he's shown it before. They've seen it. We've seen it on the mound. So you pay premium for that, right? Okay. So that's my grade on that. Number 2, old D Willie, Devin Williams signs a 3-year, $51 million with the New York Mets. They are basically hedging against Edwin Diaz not coming back, though he is, by all accounts, negotiating to come back. Devin had a down year with the Yankees. We've talked ad nauseum about this. But he does do a lot of the similar things to Edwin Diaz, right? He goes on these streaks where he's unhittable. He strikes out the world. Yes, it gets dicey there sometimes a little bit, and it's cardiac, but he also can punch out everybody. And he finished very strong and had a very good showing in the playoff series. He pitched really well. So from August 10th on, he was nails. He was what we saw. But as we established in the What's Wrong with Devin Williams video on YouTube, his defense was not great. And he was used to being on a Brewers team that was very good defensively every year. They're always top 5 defensive team, and he benefited from that because he is a fly ball guy, strikes out a lot of guys, and he has a very high BABIP, usually, unless your defense is incredible and the balls are being run down. So let's go through the stats on the deal real quick. 3 years, $51 million deal. It's actually $15 million of that 51 are deferred, so that's $5 million from each year, so that brings the AAV down it was 17 down to 12, and then he's getting paid $2 million a year in bonuses because presumably he lives somewhere with a lower state tax rate than New York City, which is pretty much everywhere but California. I'm assuming he probably lives in Florida or Texas, or I mean, he might live in Washington. I don't know. He maybe in one of the no income tax states, which means those $2 million every year are taxed like 13% or 11. I think it's 12%, 12.1% less. So that's not nothing. That's $250,000 in realized real money, which then helps offset the deferments.
KP, the website is chubbyshorts.com. The brand is Chubby's, but it's not just shorts.
Yeah, don't be fooled by the website's name. This is a one-stop shop for all things that I love. Swimming trunks, golf polos, and even flannels. It fits me perfectly. One-stop shop is the place to go.
Yes, sir. KP, I've been wearing their flannel overshirt. It's like my favorite flannel, and your softest sweater having a little baby. It's the best of both worlds. Classic flannel look with the warmth of a fleece, and we know it's that time of year to pull that off. The Chubby's flannel overshirt. It feels like your favorite flannel, but with the warmth of a cozy sweater. And for a limited time, Chubby's is giving our listeners 20% off your purchase at Chubby's with the promo code FOUL at checkout. But if it's Black Friday, skip the code. Take advantage of an even bigger markdown during their exclusive Black Friday sale. Just head to chubbysshorts.com and make sure to support the show by telling them that Foul Territory sent you.
There's a lot of stuff moving around here. So that number is really big, but like the deferments also lower the value of it because it's paid later. And so the AAV projection is more around, instead of the 15 million, it's more around the 12, 13 million a year, like in real money. That's how much it's really actually worth long term. No, probably more like 14. But so you can go by 17. I'm going to go use the 14 number and see if $14 million a year is the right price for Devin Williams. Last year didn't go as well as it should. He had a 4.79 ERA, 62 innings pitched, 45 hits allowed. That's pretty good. He had 90 Ks. That's really good. 25 walks, a little bit high, but again, he got better as the year went on, which is good for a 34.7% K rate and a 9.7% walk rate, which is, again, about 1% above average. He's still got to work on that. It is just something he does. But he had a 1.13 whip, that's not a ton of base run. Like, that's solid. Like, that's not a ton of guys on base. It was just like he was getting hurt by the random homer every once in a while. He had 15 holds and 18 saves, and he only blew 4 saves the whole year, including holds. So, like, I know I think they came like three of the 4 came in like 2 weeks. So we remember that. But like for the most part, he did the job that he was out there to go, even though it was messy sometimes. And he finished the year really strong. So what happened last year? Let's talk about the defenses again. The Yankees were 12th in fielding run value at 8, and they were 18th in outs above average with -4. And we also established in that video before that the vast majority of the numbers bringing these numbers down were Anthony Volpe and Jason Dominguez in left. Like, those two guys were really, really struggled defensively. And everyone else was pretty good, well, above average. Bellinger was good. Judge was good. Goldschmidt, when he was playing first, was good. Ben Rice is average. He's not great, but it's possible. So, like, there's a lot going on there, but they're just a slightly below average defensive team. It's not as bad as you think it is, but it's not great. Okay. Also, there is a truck backing up because, of course, I'm sure they'll back up for the next 20 to 35 minutes, though. So I apologize for that, but there's nothing I can do about it. Oh, or they won't. Great. Moving on. Back to the defenses. Okay, now he's going to the Mets, who were worse than the Yankees. So that's not great. But the Mets were 19th in FRV with a -5 and 21st with an outs above average with -13. But they added Marcus Semien, who was a +7 outs above average by himself at second base. So him and Lindor up the middle will make a big difference. They kind of had a revolving door of second baseman. So that should help. They should improve. And they're looking to improve their outfield at moving Nimmo and moving on. So by all accounts, they will get better. But do I think they're going to get like top of the league better? Probably not. They'll probably be like an average to above average team. So I don't know if it's going to benefit a ton from that. His BABIP was 299 when his career average is 270. Now that was crazy high. It was like 340 for a lot of the year, and then he started to have stuff go his way a little bit, especially when Volpe got a little bit less playing time, and Jason Dominguez started a platoon, and they got him out of left field. Basically, when they got Caballero, his BABIP got much better. So he's really hurt by defense. Devin Williams is really hurt by poor defense, and he always has been. So, and he's always had good defense until he went to the Yankees. So we'll see if the Mets can, like, if they have the type of defense that he can get away with some of the stuff he does. But I think in general, it will improve, and it might be okay. In WAR, he had a .3 B WAR and a 1.1 F WAR. Again, big discrepancy. So they're like, yeah, he got a little bit unlucky with some defense stuff and some timing stuff, and that made it look a lot worse than it maybe was. I agree with that statement, though he wasn't as dominant as he was before. Just general, even the underlying numbers weren't as good, but they were more in line, right? And he just wasn't getting the results until August, and then he started getting those results, and then we saw what good version of him is. So he gets about a 1.1 to a 1.4 WAR every year. Again, we're saying $8 million per WAR. That takes us to what, 10 to 12 million a year-ish as fair value just based on WAR. So he's getting a 17 AAV, but again, we're going to take that down to 14. Still a little bit of an overpay, I think. And even with the deferrals, it's still like 14 and a half. So yes, he's maybe making a little bit more money, especially with a 3-year deal. A little bit more money than his value shows from last year, but again, he has track record before that, so maybe that adds a couple more years. And also, he's one of the premier relievers on the market, which then does what? Creates a little bit of a bidding war, makes him affordable, and him and like Edwin Diaz, he's worth more. Like, he's more expensive than Devin Williams, so maybe the team's like, we're not going to be able to get Edwin Diaz. We're not going to be able to coax him away from the Mets. They're just going to outbid us anyways. So let's go for the number 2 guy. That's Devin Williams. And then maybe there's a bidding war that bumped it up a little bit. So, is this an overpay? I think slightly, maybe I'm leaning that way. But again, I think it's accounted by the way that free agency works and the way that the market is, where he sits in that draft, in that depth chart. It's pretty close. He maybe got a scooch more than I would have guessed. I would have said maybe 345. That would have felt more close to right on. But again, I love it when players can get just a little bit more. Again, it's about furthering the market as well. So that job was done as well. But I don't think this is a crazy deal either. Maybe the years is crazy. Maybe it was a 2-year deal, would have made more sense. Maybe opt-outs after every year would be different. Like we're trying to re-platform. I don't know. Those things weren't in there, though. So maybe it's a little bit risky, just barely. But, I think he's going to be fine. And he's played in New York for a year, so he knows what to expect. So it's not horrible. And if they got Edwin Diaz, I'm feeling really happy about it. Okay. Now, our last deal, before we move on, Ryan Helsley signs a 2-year, $28 million deal with the Baltimore Orioles. And he has an opt-out after the first year player option. So we have 1 player option, opt out. When there is a player option, like what Blake Snell did with the San Francisco Giants, what Pete Alonso did with the Mets, when there's a player after the first year with a high AV, that is a re-platforming year. They're hoping they can go recoup some of their value and then possibly test free agency again to get the big payday. So it's basically just it's called a bridge deal. This feels like a bridge deal with some security on the back end, meaning if it doesn't work out, I still make that I can still opt in, make that $14 million on the back, and they have to pay me. No one wants to have to approach it that way, but that is why that's there. Okay, so that's $14 million a year. As far as I know, there's no deferments. And this is his last year. He had a 4.5 ERA, 56 innings, 61 hits allowed. That's a red flag for me. Giving up more hits than innings as a reliever is a red flag, especially when you throw 100. 63 Ks, still not a super high K rate, and a 25 walks. For a 25% K rate and a 9.9% walk rate, which is the highest of the 3 we've talked about, with a 1.5 whip. Those numbers are not as good as the other 2. His underlying numbers aren't as good as the other 2. They're not screaming that he just had a weird year with unlucky. There was something else. He had 21 saves, a single hold, and 9 blown saves. So he was 30% of the time not getting the job done. That's also a big red flag. But remember, he had a 3 with the Cards, that's ERA, and a 7.2 with the Mets. So A lot of this had happened with the Mets. We know about the tipping that happened, but there's one big concern for me, and that's gave up way more hits and struck out less guys this year. Those are not good, right? You can say high hits, but still high strikeouts. Maybe there's unlucky. Higher hits and lower strikeouts means it might be stuff related. That's concerning to me. Even though we didn't see a lower velocity, it could be command related. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But how much did defense have to do with it? Again, this is another red flag. Didn't have a lot to do with it. The Cards were 9th in FRV and with 21 and tied in first with the Cubs with 36 outs above average. So they had a very good defense, and though he had a 3, which helped, the other numbers didn't really improve. Like the strikeout numbers weren't better, and he still gave up lots of hits. He was better with them, but he still had a 327 BABIP with them when his career average is a 277. So he's still 50 points above with the team that was good defensively. That's not great. That's, again, we're now possibly it could be location or stuff related. Now he's with the Orioles. They're 22nd in both FRV and outs above average with -22 and -24. So he's going to a much, much, much worse defensive team. A worse defensive team than the Mets were last year, which, again, not great. So we ended the year with a 344 BABIP, which is 67 points above his career. So there is some unluckiness, but also I went and looked at fastball command. It was right down the middle, a lot of just middle. And his slider was the only pitch that got people out. His fastball was absolutely shellacked all year, and that is concerning for a guy who throws 99 to 101. I don't know why. Like, even with that command, you should still be getting missed hits, but they were just on it. And so there's something wrong. There's something with the fastball that's not working very well, even when you miss your spot. And then when you throw that hard, you're supposed to be able to get away with that stuff, and he wasn't. Okay? Let's talk about WAR. B WAR 0.1, F WAR 0.2. Again, now they're closer together, so even peripherally, he didn't underperform because of unlucky. It's showing he's not that unlucky. I'm more concerned about this still. Like, maybe not. But he has averaged a 1 to 1.2 WAR, but he's getting $14 million a year in AAV. So even his league year average of 1 would give him $8 million. Even from that metric, this is an overpay. There's a lot going on, but he is pretty durable. He's made 50-plus appearances in 4 of the last 5 years. He has 105 saves in his career, which is experience, but sometimes he's got poor command. He relies heavily on the slider. He's a 2-pitch guy. He's got a changeup, but it's just kind of there for show. And the poor performance seems less about defense and more about his stuff on his fastball and the way he's commanding the zone. So he gets hit really hard sometimes. Now, one caveat, tipping. He might have been tipping all year. So, like, if that can explain a lot. Tipping is a big deal, especially for a guy who throws 2 pitches. So if they're picking up on his fastball, doesn't matter how hard you throw, man. If you're picking up on your fastball and you're throwing it right down the middle all the time, you're just going to get lit, which happened quite a bit. He had a lot of blow-ups, especially in New York. So I do think this is a little bit more of an overpay. But again, get your money. If a team's willing to give it to you, great. And I think that this was much more of a bidding situation because the Orioles desperately need someone to finish games because Felix Bautista had shoulder surgery. He's not going to be ready for spring training, and they don't know what version of him they're going to get anyways. So they don't want to. They want some security out there, and they simply weren't willing to pay enough for Devin Williams, and that's probably what this came from. Like, he's the more affordable option for more teams, which means there was more people involved with that one, which means they wanted to get it done quickly because the Orioles have a lot of needs. That's probably what came. They're just like, you know what? Go get him. It's a 2-year deal. In the big scheme of things, $28 million just isn't huge. It just isn't. We can afford to really miss on this more than we can on a guy for 5 years, right? So I think that's what happened, but it would lead me to the conclusion that was indeed a little bit of an overpay, but I think the Orioles know that and they're okay with it. And if they're okay with it, so am I. All right? Okay, so those are the big things that I think went into these deals. So when these deals seem crazy because of recent performance, it's important to ask a few other questions, okay? Like, how big of the hole is the team that this guy fills, right? For example, in Helsley's case, a big one. right? That we need this specific thing really badly, that could drive the price up. Does he fit with the rest of the team's strengths? Meaning, like, we're good defensively. This guy got hurt by bad defense. We can, like, he's just going to improve a little bit. There's going to be a little improvement no matter what he does. He can throw the same thing as he did last year, which wasn't good, and he'll still be a little bit better, probably, because we have a better defense. That's a good question. What other options are there out there, right? Like, if this is exactly what you need and there's just the guy behind him just isn't going to fill that hole, you only have one option. The other two guys are too expensive. You only have one option, so you got to go for it. And is anyone else going to bid us? Is there a bidding war? Like, was there a bidding war involved? Probably. You can kind of intuit that. They usually don't tell you, but they usually. So ask those questions. A little bit of education for you. Just thought it was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. But those were, are these guys overpaid, or are we all just freaking out for no reason? Usually, it's that second one.